You know, I wasn't even going to talk about this game, because I figured it was just going to be flatly better than the first one. I thought it was going to have the same solid writing, solid acting, and they were going to make a few tweaks to the combat to make it less chaotic. On top of that, the game got pretty good reviews already, so I was sure that I would just be another voice telling people to buy the game. Ever since seeing him and stuff like not only Spider-Verse in the last game, but as a side character in other cartoons, I was excited to be able to see him in his first solo adventure. I started playing the game fully prepared to sit back, relax, and enjoy Miles Morales without feeling the need to make a video about it, but when I started playing it, I saw a lot of cracks showing. This game has a lot of issues that I haven't really seen people talk about, and so I had to give my 2 cents on it. This game for me is a mix of running into bugs that just take you out of the experience, and while I do like a lot of things in it, there are issues that need to be addressed. Like I said, this game is getting good reviews for a reason, and we will be talking about the good things, but we've got to talk about the problems first, because this game has problems in spades. For starters, this game runs surprisingly poorly on PS4. Now, I do not have Scrooge McDuck money, so I can't really speak to the way it runs on PS5, but it is hella buggy on the PS4. I played the game all the way to 99% completion in about 4 sittings, and I ran into at least 2 major bugs each time I played it. Out of the 8 hours of footage I recorded, the game removed all map markers for me, forced me to move at a snail's pace when I wasn't web swinging from the end of the Rhino fight to the end of the Looter side quest, stuttered to a complete stop at the beginning of the Street Artist mission, refused to load Miles' body at the beginning of the Feast Sabotage mission, this is my favorite Spidey suit, played entire cutscenes without one character's dialogue.
Roxxon needs to pay. Not like this. I can't. I made a promise.
When this happened, I legit thought my PlayStation was dying. I figured since my console was 4 years old and had been in a few rough spots with me, that it was time to, put it out to pasture. So I took a break from using it for a few days, and I wish I was recording the next time I played it again because it actually got worse. When Miles picked up the clipboard in the mission with the feast truck, I couldn't move at all. I couldn't run, I couldn't jump, I couldn't do anything. I tried opening the menus and the PlayStation menu to see if it would reset my controls, but I eventually just had to quit the game and restart the mission. And that wasn't the only bug that practically broke the game for me. After leaving the area where I got the Prowler-themed suit, my controls just stopped working again. All I could do was walk, run, and web zip. I couldn't web swing, I couldn't climb walls, attack, use my venom, or do anything, and I was only able to fix it by web zipping to a spider training terminal where it reset my controls for me. I'm trying to be Spider-Man, damn it, not Man-Man. And then I had 2 crimes separately glitch out on me, with one convict clipping inside a freight truck where I couldn't reach him, and an underground feast raid where none of the enemies spawned, causing me to once again have to reset the game if I wanted to do it. Now, I know I have footage of half of these bugs, but I'm giving you this much detail so you know that it actually happened, and how frustrating it was to give this game try after try, and have it still run terribly. Like I said earlier, I heard pretty much exclusively good reviews, so I don't know what the issue is here. It's not like I got a bad disc or anything, because I bought the game digitally, and if it's a porting issue, these glitches need to get patched, because not everyone is going to be able to afford a PS5. And considering that this game is a little cheaper than most new releases, I bet some people will play this game and think a new console generation isn't worth it if their flagship game has a port that runs like ass. Like I said, I don't know if this is a porting issue or a programming one, but if I'm upset over the game glitching on PS4, then I know I'd be pretty pissed off if I dropped $500 for a PS5 only to have the first game I play on it run like dog shit. The action is also surprisingly chaotic and clumsy. I mentioned in my last video that I liked the combat because it was the circle of improvising, juggling your gadgets and your abilities with the environment, but that the one dodge button made fighting different enemies feel kinda clunky, and you could wind up dodging directly into an attack. And I wasn't the only person saying this, so I was expecting to make changes to the combat to keep you from getting cheap shot, but this game really cranks those issues up to 11. Instead, Insomniac tweaked the controls to put a bigger focus on the things only Miles can do, and while I think the invisibility and venom attacks look cool, they're not really executed well. The game's meters are now for venom attacks and healing instead of finishers, which was a kind of poor decision. Now, the last game basically did the same thing, tying your offense to your defense, but while finishers killed enemies and dealt big damage to bosses, they were also completely unnecessary to beating the game. There are multiple enemies in Miles Morales where you cannot deal damage unless you use your venom to break their guard, but if you get hit, you need to heal since it pretty reasonably doesn't take a lot of damage to kill Spider-Man, which starts this loop of trying to hit enemies to build meter so you can use Venom, trying not to get hit so you don't need to use your meter for heals, and repeating the process. On top of that, the game throws an obnoxious amount of enemies at you at one time, so it's pretty damn easy to dodge into an enemy's attacks, causing you to heal yourself and starting the whole cycle over again. To add insult to injury, the game has a surprising amount of difficulty landing hits on the target you want to hit because of the amount of enemies. I had to restart this fight with the underground brutes 5 times because the game wouldn't target the brute at the start of the fight, causing me an entire meter on a normal enemy, and I'd get brutalized by the rest of them. And while I like the idea of invisibility letting you one-shot any type of enemies, it's not a good excuse for filling an area with enemies. When I think of the fights this game has, overwhelming is the first word on my mind, and not in a good way. Villains in this game are also kind of flat. It was so blatantly obvious that Krieger was going to be evil the minute he walked on screen that I thought Insomniac had to have been setting up for a twist. This game is the issue that some shows have where you can tell what someone's character is going to be the first time you see them, which annoys me because the story has good writing in it, but it's pretty much reserved for small-scale things and side content. The game also has my least favorite comic book trope that I lovingly call Comic Bitch Syndrome, or CBS. CBS is when characters don't trust each other for no goddamn reason, refuse to listen to important stuff, lie to their allies, or just be a dick for no reason whatsoever. The CW shows are a great example of just how Comic Bitch Syndrome can soak the fun out of a story, and this game gets it pretty hard in the end. The last 2 missions have Miles learning that Finn's plan of destroying the Newform reactors will backfire, and she'll end up nuking all of Harlem. So Miles naturally tries to tell her that she's about to nuke the city, but she refuses to listen until the reactor is actually exploding. Now, I'm not saying that she should listen to him from the beginning, but there's only so many times that someone can say they need to tell you something before you realize that they're not trying to trick you. But like I said, the game's doing well for a reason, and while I have issues with the story, the combat, and all of the bugs that are in the game, Miles' adventure also looks absolutely gorgeous. I think the presentation is the one irredeemably perfect thing about this game. People look even better than they did in the last game, and seeing Miles' face go from this to this is a huge improvement. Last time, I also spent a good few minutes talking about the new Peter face, and while I still don't like it, it's kind of growing on me. I'm not going to harp on stuff like that in the future, because at this point, it's not going to be changing, and I'm fine with that. The game also makes Harlem feel alive with all of the street art and lights, and New York just feels good exploring. When it's not glitching, it's easily the most fun part of the game to just swing around the city. Insomniac put a lot of time into making Miles animate differently in way more stylishly than Peter, and I love how you can use your Venom powers in exploration, and I was just having a blast exploring the city, looking for suit parts and the optional story stuff. And while I have problems with the story as a whole, the optional story stuff is really good. This game takes a step back and focuses on smaller scale characters, which I absolutely love. I mentioned last time that I loved how playing as Miles and MJ gave the game a more grounded perspective, and that definitely shows through here. While I love watching Peter interact with people in his game, it also felt like he was just moving from one Spider-Man co-star to the next. This game has a group of original characters that you help throughout the story, and they show up in the final mission when things start escalating. It really does feel like Miles is learning to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and the people in the game are learning to deal with having him around. Miles has to actively win people over since they're so used to Peter being on patrol, and it's actually really satisfying seeing the Spider-Man mural with the both of them at the end of the game. I was honestly having more fun doing the missions from the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app than the main mission because it was just fun to talk to these normal people and help solve their problems. I also really love how this is a story pretty much completely driven by people of color. This game takes place in and around Harlem, and you can really feel the cultural energy of the area throughout the characters and the story. This is probably the first game I've played with a giant cast of Black, Hispanic, gay, and even deaf characters, and it doesn't feel like I'm being pandered at. I also love how Miles' heritage feels absolutely perfect and natural to him. Normally, mixed-race characters don't really have a lot of carryover from both their cultures, but that's not the case here. I love how the writers made Miles fluent in Spanish, and Najee Jeter does a fantastic job of integrating the language smoothly into his dialogue. Hearing Miles and his mom say "te quiero mucho" and "te quiero más" warmed my cold Grinch heart by about 1,000 degrees, and I can really see where this game has its heart, but it's hard to appreciate it when the other stuff is honestly kind of a mess. I want to love this game so much because, like I said, I love Miles, and there are really good things in this story, but the way this game plays after giving it try after try, coming up with anything to fix the bugs on my own without having to close the game makes me so torn on it. This is the perfect example of why I don't really believe in review scores, because everyone has different tastes for things they do and don't like. When this game's on, it's fucking on, and the good stuff is gonna be more than enough to have fans coming back to it for years, and that's good. It should be. But my first thought when I think of this game is all the time I spent frustrated with it. So please, Insomniac, fix the bugs, because it doesn't really matter how much I love a story if I don't want to have my hands on the controller.